Hi everyone and welcome back. We're reading Brightstorm by Vashti Hardy and we're on chapter 7, Lucky Spoon. The sun hadn't even peeped over the horizon when Arthur and Maudie woke. He sneaked downstairs and rushed through the morning routine of cleaning out the fireplaces and sweeping the floors. I can make up some excuse for the dockmaster, but Beggins will know something's up when you're not there when she wakes, Maudie said, shutting the front door behind her. I'll say I went to Ratchet's to pick up her supplies. I can get them on the way back. After a quick wash in the street pump, Arthur and Maudie headed north into the heart of London with its domes, towers and great brick-fronted houses. Eventually, they came to the street listed in the advertisement, Archangel Street. The houses were trimmed with ornate iron balconies threaded by rose-covered vines, arranged around a central square garden. Maudie brushed Arthur's wayward hair through with her fingers. "We look like a pair of ragamuffins." Then she untied the ribbon and retied it around a wayward lock of her hair, holding it back from her face. Arthur stared up the street, looking at the numbers. 20, 18, 16, each one identical in its perfection. They carried on until they stood before number 4. He looked at the advert clutched in his hand, then up at the house. He frowned. "It looks as though someone jumbled up the pieces," he said. Number 4 Archangel Street stood alone from the rest, and it looked unlike any building he'd ever seen. It was smart as its neighbours, with fine brass hinges on windows with polished frames, but it was crooked, as though the house insisted on doing its own thing. There were wooden panels with metal rivets, windows of different shapes, round and long and square, with intricate shutters on pulleys. Curious creatures were emblazoned in stained glass windows at the top, and the whole roof looked as though it had been put on sideways. "This is some house," he said. "Wow, look at the mechanism on the windows! Some kind of auto winder by the look of it," Maudie said. "Are you ready?" Arthur said. He nodded. Arthur's stomach turned over with nerves. He wanted it so much. Would Dad have told him? He remembered what he'd said before he'd left for the expedition. Fear kills more dreams than failure ever will. You can be comfortable or courageous, never both at once. There was scuffling behind. Arthur turned and almost bumped into a rather round and tall woman stumbling off the curb. She cursed in the foulest language he had ever heard, and a huge silver spoon fell from her coat. Arthur bent and picked it up for her. He looked at her curiously. The woman clutched a piece of paper the same as his. She wore a little tilted hat that looked like those the gentlemen of Uptown wore, and she had frizzy ebony hair. A heavily skirted coat bulged out like petals at the waist, and her enormous feet had been squeezed into what appeared to be gentlemen's brogues. She took the spoon from him and smiled. "It's me lucky spoon, not that it's brought much luck today. Bleeding shoes are 4 sizes too small. You'd think in the whole of London I'd be able to get a pair in my size at short notice, but, well, you'd think wrong." "Yes, you would," Arthur nodded politely. He did his absolute best not to look at her extraordinarily large feet. "Are you two here for the evaluation?" She looked at them with narrowed eyes and a knowing smile. One of her eyebrows raised independently of the other. "Why, you look like a pair of scared bunnies." Maudie smiled and said, "It just means a lot to us. It's a nerve-wracking business for sure, an evaluation, and one could easily turn from it at the last minute, like when I applied to go with the Aquafreeders on that expedition to the island of Nimoy. I stood outside for a whole chime before I got the courage to go in. Mind you, I got the job and wished I hadn't, because I had nothing to cook but bleeding seaweed and spinefish for weeks on end, and they taste worse than a sea sailor's stinky shoes, I tell you." She took a big breath. "I vowed only skyships from then on. So as Granny said, if you want the best eggs, go straight for the goose." She smiled. "I know, we'll go in together." She talked a lot, but Arthur took an instant shine to her. "Thank you, but honestly, we're all right on our own." She ignored him. "Felicity Wiggity, pleased to meet you." She reached for Arthur's right hand, looked down, then back at his face. "Oh, will you look at that?" Her cheeks flushed beetroot. "Dreadfully sorry, Sonny." Arthur tucked the advert in his pocket and extended his left hand. "I'm Arthur," he offered. Pleased to meet you, Arthur. Now, there's a story behind that arm and no mistaking it, and I'm dying to know, but now's not the time to ask. It's something for friends to discuss, and as I've barely made your acquaintance—" Her cheeks blushed redder. "Brings a whole new meaning to putting your foot in it." He stared at her feet. "Ha! Putting your foot in it! Me! Who'd have thought?" He could feel Maudie itching to give Felicity an arms story, but there was no way of getting a word in. Arthur and Maudie couldn't help but laugh. "And this must be your, a twinny. A fine pair you two make, and no mistaking. Like popples in a pod, matching freckles and dimples to boot. I can tell we're all going to get on," she said, hooking Arthur's arm. "After all, I'm footloose and fancy-free, and you're completely harmless." He put her hand over her mouth, clearly shocked by what had come out, but Arthur grinned. It felt good to make light of it. Most people looked at him with alarm, as though his situation was contagious, or worse, they looked at him with pity. As Felicity paused to take a breath, Maudie saw her chance. He was struck by lightning twice in one day in a storm in the Northern Isles. The first bolt took his hand, the next his elbow. Felicity laughed. "Ha! What a yarn! No mistaking!" Before anyone could say another word, she escorted them up the steps. Underneath the number 4 on the wall, a brass plate read Aurora Heights. Dad had told Arthur a story about the aurora, strange magical lights of all colours which appeared in the furthest skies. "Go on, one of you knock," said Felicity. "You do it, Artie," said Maudie. The painted black door had a great brass knocker in the shape of a bird. Arthur thought it was a swallow. He lifted it and let go, the loud knock echoing in the street. After a moment, slow footsteps approached and the door creaked open. An old man with collar-length white hair combed neatly backwards surveyed them from top to bottom. "Can I help?" he said, his voice raspy, with the poshest uptown accent. He raised his V-shaped eyebrows. "We're here for the evaluation," Maudie said. As he dipped forward, his whole body curled over them. "Your children?" he said curiously. Arthur looked up. "We're 12 and 2 moons." The butler shook his head, then gestured to Felicity. "This is very irregular. Just the madame, I'm afraid." "Look here!" Felicity waved her hand. "Welby," he said, giving the faintest dip of his head. "Welby, this is my niece and this is my nephew. Hugely knowledgeable they are in ship-like affairs. I completely vouch for their talents in—" She looked to Maudie. "Engineering," Maudie said proudly. Felicity gave an impressed nod, and she looked at Arthur with an encouraging smile. All he could say was, knives in the kitchen." Felicity swallowed and raised her eyebrows. "Yes, knives, such a talent. So, where I go, they go. Besides, it says open evaluations, ain't no age specified. Give 'em a chance, will you?" She grinned toothily. Welby surveyed them, a small amused grin on his lips. "I suppose you'd better come in then." And that's the end of chapter 7. Thanks very much for listening. See you next time.